Hello, and welcome back to another episode of International Immersion, a podcast where we seek to connect various people, cultures, and events, where we can discuss them and learn more about the world around us. So today we have another episode with my good friend Andy from Argentina, and for today's discussion, we wanted to talk more about Argentina. I personally have never been there, but Andy is from the Buenos Aires area, and I thought it'd be a great idea if we talked to him more about what Argentina has to offer, the things he likes about it, and going through some topics where he can share with people around the world, what he thinks of his country, and in the same time learn more about another interesting country that makes up this great world of ours. So Andy, it's great to have you on today.
Thank you very much, Sean. It's my pleasure to be here back again. Well, I'd love to tell you guys about Argentina and perhaps provide you with a 101 guide of what Argentina is about if you ever encounter another Argentine in your journeys around the world. So we got a wide variety of topics, and why not begin with my personal favorite one, which is the economy. Because why know about Argentina's economy, you might be wondering. And it's because it's very special. It's one of those few places in the world that has a double-digit inflation. We are comparable to Venezuela and some other countries in Africa. And, well, inflation is essentially means that if you have a higher inflation, that's bad because prices, they go increasing along the year, our currency depreciates. If you're wondering what that number is right now, it's around 40%.
40%, wow.
Yeah, that's a lot, right? So that means that something that costs today, like 1 Argentine peso, would end up costing 1.4 by the end of the year. So I've heard about, the inflation rate in Argentina before, but hearing it from you, that's just like, wow. Because the U.S. inflation rate's around 2 to 3. It's just natural. It's like, we are used to that. It keeps on growing every year. Like some governments have tried to lower it down, but they just can't. Because I like to think about the economy as you're just like handling a puppet. Those ones that you have like strings, and when you raise one of the arms or that like string puppet, like you're lowering the other one. So there's so many different variables that you're trying to control, but at the same time, while you're actually you need to provide people with like subsidies for like transportation, for food, for living, right? So that increases the expenditure of the country. But then at the same time, you need to where are you taking that money from? You're taking that money by just printing more cash, and that generates inflation because the value of the currency there just decreases over time because there's more of the same thing. You're not actually creating value. You're not using that money in many cases in Argentina to actually, do more production, expand, the possibilities, build road infrastructure, provide incentives for companies. You're just giving it directly to the people. Why? Because understandably, we got around 40% of poverty. So you would say, roughly 4 out of 10 people that you would encounter back home are below the poverty line, which is something crazy that that is a story by itself. I encourage you to research that if you're interested in. So it's hard dealing with so many things at the same time.
Oh, naturally. Anytime an economy has more and more factors that are affecting it, it's harder to deal with it from a government standpoint.
No, absolutely. So of course you need to give some resources to the people because they need them right now. But at the same time, you're trying to lower the expenditure of the country because that you have an internal deficit. So how do you manage that? At the same time, your currency continues to devalue itself because nobody likes your currency because it just continues to increase over here. To give you an example, I was filling some university papers on last April, and the exchange rate from pesos to US dollar was that 80 Argentine pesos made $1. Today, just 2 months after that day, the exchange rate is 120 Argentine pesos to $1.
And it has been going on like that until one point we will have already so many zeros in our currency that they will just begin to like take them off and begin to count again from one, which is a sad thing. But eventually that will happen. It has happened. It's a cycle. So nobody wants to like save an Argentine peso, so they want to buy US dollars, because that's a currency that over time, of course, retains its value. But what is the government doing in face of that? Because if like people buy more US dollars, the value of our currency continues to devalue even more. So they put restrictions.
So it's kind of a vicious cycle, but because people may be trying to buy into a US dollar or another safer currency in their mind, that's actually creating a kind of making the snowball, big grow.
And what's worse is that like if that is a problem, then the few foreign companies that operate in the country, they cannot take the revenue back to their own countries, because we want imagine like Ford, the car manufacturer. They make cars, they send them to Brazil, to Chile, some other like countries around town, and they cannot take their profits back home, because otherwise that would mean that the US dollars are leaving the country. So they put restrictions on that. So again, which company nobody wants to invest in here if you have like so many controls on movement of currency. So it's a big problem, and at the same time, all right, let's say we control it. Let's just like free that movement of like currency from one place to another one. Then you're just like opening up the economy, and that harms a lot like local producers. So,
it's a vicious cycle, because you can try some initiatives that benefit these people, but it will affect these other people or these industries, vice versa. So there's nothing perfect. It's like, anything you do, any economic system has its, pros and cons.
No, it's just nuts. So let's suppose there was a way of getting US dollars, which is like how we save money back home, without actually, like trying to limit like using these very drastic measures. So where do we go to? We go to the IMF and the World Bank, because those folks tend to loan money to countries that need it. Now they do impose conditions on what you should do with that money, like what is the direction your country's economy should take. The problem is that sometimes folks who detail those set of instructions, they are not really people that have lived in the country before, and if they had, they would understand that those policies, they don't work here. Because Argentines, I like to say, they are very special people. They like to protest like you have never seen in the world. And they will go out to the streets with like frying pans and, like those wooden spoons, and literally you'll have 10,000 people, 100,000 people in the biggest avenues, and just knocking there the frying pan with a spoon, just claiming for the government to just not do something else. Yeah, like you try, some of those policies might mean, reducing expenditures to the people, reducing subsidies on transportation, on electricity, like those sort of things. Yeah, people don't like that. So,
Andy, from what you're saying, we could do a whole episode on the economy, or even several episodes, because I can tell how much you're into this and how much you are really putting your emphasis into it.
It's just like I'm no economist, but the reason why I understand this, because it's like engraved in everybody's life, like what's going on at a national level, in terms of politics and economics, and you don't really need to study that to actually have a somewhat basic understanding. You'll see that something very common among Argentines is that everybody can talk about economics, which is something I haven't found in my time in the US, for instance. Like, folks know about their country, but they're not so knowledgeable about, like perhaps this state produces this thing, and like this other state produces some other things, and the government is pursuing these sort of policies to increase spending, whatever. No, it's very few people, only those who study that. But I hear those decisions that the government takes affects us at such a higher level that we need to know about. No?
So I kind of get that you're saying that, you know, if for Argentines, it's kind of part of their identity is to be involved in to be involved in economics. That's cool because in the U.S. a lot of people know a lot of people know something, and a lot of people know nothing about whatever topic you talk about. So it just really
say. Well, if you take a random farmer, probably I don't know how much that dude would know about it. But surely he's also affected too because the government puts restrictions on the amount of. So I told you about exchange rate from pesos to dollars, but there's a special exchange rate when you want to export stuff, and there's another special exchange rate when you want to import stuff. So of course the importing exchange rate is much higher than the exporting one, so that the government can make some sort of benefit from there.
Yeah, they can impose tariffs and they can tax that to try to generate as much revenue as possible. So
so it's there's a very that in Argentina the most famous type of music, it's called tango.
Good old tango.
The tango dancing is just it's a beautiful type of dancing. It's between the man and the female, very close together. It's very romantic, but the main. Why am I mentioning this? Because there's a very famous song. It's called El Cambalache.
El Cambalache. Okay.
Or just look it in YouTube. And I think the lines of that song were written in the 50s and in the 60s. And they describe Argentina's economic problems back then. And if you were listening to that song today, you would see that nothing has changed. It's incredible.
I see.
As applicable as in the 50s and 60s as it is in the 2020s today. So it's just remarkable.
Yeah, because wherever you go in the world, I mean, there's going to be things you're going to, regardless of what time period you're in, you can relate to whatever time period you're in. But that is kind of an interesting fact that it's almost like, oh, I know exactly what this is, even though it's 40, 50 years, since that song was produced.
It was written. Yeah, another I don't want to bore you guys with speaking about the economy, but if there's just one last phrase I'd like to say about the economy in Argentina, which is I think a very famous Nobel Prize winner. I won't say the name because I'm not sure. But you can literally Google this phrase, which is there's 4 types of countries in the world. There's of course the developed countries and the developing countries, and then there is Japan and Argentina. So why does he say that? Because Japan is, of course, a country that from the ashes from after the Second World War, it rose to be what it is today. While us, we actually were a world power. That's a fun fact for Argentina. Something we are also very reminiscent about in our lives. Yeah, back in the 1920s, which is literally 100 years ago, we were actually the 7th country of the world. But now we are just Argentina. We're probably just known for our soccer. Here it's called football or some other sport. Or perhaps because of this. Perhaps because of the economy.
Well, I would say, having studied history and geography, I mean, Argentina is definitely known for some things. And it's known for its, the Rio de Plata, for Buenos Aires, for its beef or cattle, but also it's definitely known for its economics. That's one thing that a lot of people around the world, when they hear the term Argentina, that's maybe one thing that kind of jumps to their mind first.
I thought you guys should have. I think there's some sort of basic understanding. If somebody comes to you and tries to explain about how Argentina's economy works, you've heard it from me first. But should you be warned that perhaps everybody has their own interpretation?
Of course, everyone will interpret things differently.
The best one. Because everybody feels it in a different way.
And transitioning to a related topic is politics. So
politics.
And from what you were saying on the economy, I can already see kind of the political implications there. So
absolutely. You know how in the U.S. you have 2 parties, the Democrat and the Republicans. Well, back here, I mean, there's always one party, and then there's some other party that is formed from a coalition to defeat that one party. So that one party I'm speaking about is the Peronism, or Peronistas in Spanish. And it was founded by one individual called Juan Perón in the 1950s, the 1940s. And he is perhaps one of the most incredible examples of like modern populism, which is something that some folks say the U.S. is going through, but like it's by no means the same. Populism, what does that mean? It's giving to the people. It's about in the sense that you're prioritizing the people over companies, the employee over the employer. You're providing lots of subsidies instead of investing, where you need to invest, which is okay because back in the day when this dude came to power, there were very big inequalities between like those who owned the companies and those who worked at those places. But when you take it a step too far, right, that leads into a lot of trouble.
All things in moderation, as they say.
Yeah, moderation, but I'm not saying that part is completely wrong because I don't understand it fully quite myself. So please Google it or find out more. The problem is I hate it when they steal money. I don't mind if you're governing my country, but just don't steal money from us, from our taxes. And so I was born in 99, and from more or less 99 until I don't know, like 2015, this same ruling party was in power. Out of which, for 12 of those, I don't know, like 16 years, it was the same pair of people. This one dude and his wife. Now the dude died, but his wife, her name is Christina Kirchner, very famous president, very very pragmatic, one of the most skilled politicians. Yet, it has the causes which she's accused of corruption are so that there's so much evidence about so much money that she has stolen from us. Literally, she would go to the Argentine Patagonia with these sacks with euros and US dollars and just bury them there in the desert, and they have been found, and it's an amount of money that is so large. We're speaking on the millions, but hundreds of millions of US dollars that have been stolen from us taxpayers, and she's still not in jail. And you know why she's still not in jail? Because she somehow manages to stay in power, or just the law system, it just doesn't work well because the president can handpick who the judges are on the Supreme Court.
She can manipulate things around her to make sure she's not prosecuted and removed from office. As long as she maintains that leadership position, she can continue to manipulate things.
Exactly, and then in 2016, this other party, which was formed as a coalition to defeat this party, so I should say this lady, this person, Cristina, she belonged to the Peronistas, which is partly because this provides that bad image around them, right? And then this other dude from another party who won the elections, but then her party would do his life impossible. Whenever he tried to pass a law, this dude that came to power in 2015, his name is Mauricio Macri, and he tried to pass laws to actually, put the country, again on the road, try to make it better again, because it's been years and years of just leaving it, die in the desert until this dude comes and tries to make things better. But in a true democratic system, you're there at the legislature, or you're at the Congress, and you need to pass laws, and they have to be approved by at least, at least more than half of the members that are present on that day's session. And yeah, he did won the elections. He did not have the majority in neither one of the chambers.
So he didn't have enough majority to actually get the laws passed. So whenever he proposed something, the other party could defeat that. That's a classic example of we call that stonewalling. You just stop everything that is from being pushed out.
The dude couldn't achieve half as much as he proposed himself to achieve. His life was made impossible too. And by the end of 2019, when his government was ending, the economic numbers were not looking right. We were the US dollar had risen from 20 to around 60 or so. So that is around 300%. That's a lot. And then just imagine that how producers are just like, they're just devastated. They're destroyed for that such a drastic change. So of course, people wanted to go back to the day where they were happier, where they had like more disposable income, where they had more subsidies. When were those days? You might be wondering. They were back when this other lady was in power. Even though she stole money, people had more money to themselves too. But this other dude, I mean, like when it's like you're giving this like a kid a candy, right? Like, you know, if you eat too many candies, that will lead to diabetes, or I don't know, like to some sort of disease.
Too much of anything is not good, and especially sweets.
It's not good, right? But like you get used to that and you like it, and when you're taking that candy away, you don't like it at all. And
exactly, you get accustomed to it. It becomes normal for you, and then when that's pried out of your hands, it creates a very quick reaction, like, hey.
No, that is a perfect way of putting it. So yeah, this lady ran not for presidency, but she was the vice president of the dude who ran for presidency, and that dude won incredibly, and that is she is our current vice president right now, even though it's been demonstrated she stole hundreds of millions of dollars from us.
That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy.
The people don't learn about their own mistakes. They keep on voting for corruption.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, one thing with politics is that, politicians are very good at projecting an image, to the masses, and, one thing I've noticed in the U.S. is that, certain parties and certain politicians, they get people to vote on emotional topics, not topics that actually benefit them. They get them riled up, and then they actually will vote against their own interests.
That is true. I definitely agree with your words in there. But on the other hand, there's also this very famous phrase that my history teacher back in high school would say, is that like people vote with their hands on their pockets, which means you feel how big your wallet feels. You feel how much cash you have in your pocket. And you feel comfortable with that. Of course, you would like to, continue with that status quo in there. But if you don't, then you'll probably want change. And as I told you before, 40% of the country is below the poverty line.
And that's so sad. That's so sad to hear.
It's very bad. And they will continue like that. You know why? Because for her, it's convenient to have them still be in poverty. While for our previous president, he wanted to, improve their lives, their lifestyle, because that's what you would need to do. But for her, she knew that if you kept like that 40% there in poverty, and you still do, they would keep on voting for her. You are not educating society enough to actually have some common sense and provide them with like resources to make sound decisions.
Hence, knowledge is power. If you have if the population overall is educated, they're going to be more cautious in what they do. They're going to think about what they do in greater detail. Hence, politicians won't be able to influence them as much if you have a more educated population. So that's a classic example of, she can keep that large voting bloc voting for her by keeping them in that position. Even though if you told them that would make them angry, but they don't see that.
No, absolutely. So yeah, that is, in a nutshell, what has happened in here over and over again for the last 70 years, perhaps. Yeah.
Well, Andy, again, I think we could do a whole other episode on this alone, because you've sparked my curiosity more and more, because there's a lot of political crap that's going on here in the U.S., but the blatancy of that is just so sad to see.
I don't know. It is interesting, right? Because we as citizens, we can the most effective way of participating politically is by voting, and you would say that your vote has so much power because it can determine the difference between one person and another one being elected. But at the same time, you as a citizen, there's decisions that are taken from above that can literally knock you out, and you feel so powerless.
Yeah.
So, and I guess that's how everybody feels, and that's the system in which we live, which I don't criticize nor glorify in any way. But we just need to accept it until someone comes with something that might seem better. But I'm okay for now, thank God. Of course, we still need to work towards like improving everybody's access to education and resources.
Yeah, there's always something to improve. No matter where you are, there's always things that can be improved, and I think that's and that's very clear to see where you are right now. So that's pretty that's very interesting. You kind of your analysis of that, and another thing I know that Argentinians are really big into, and that is sports.
Oh well. So what sports have you heard about that we are good at?
Well,
I'll do a test with you.
Well, I know, for example, like Latin America in general, football or soccer, as we call it.
Football is a proper way to say it. I accept it. All right. Football, of course. What else? What else have you heard Argentina being good at in terms of sports?
I'm not the biggest sports fan, so I'm not going to indulge you too much on that.
Oh my God! Well, let me just step in there and just Well, of course, football is our biggest pride. That makes us cry. That makes us laugh. It makes us everything. All of our emotions, perhaps most of our lives, revolve around that. And just as a political side note, right? Sometimes the government it does subsidize, like some TV channels where they screen like football matches. That way, society is entertained in a way because everybody loves soccer. It's a sport that is played from the very the shanty towns to the richest towns. Everybody plays that.
It crosses all economic and social levels.
And it's perhaps as a job or as an industry the one that will provide you perhaps with the most resources to ascend economically and socially. We've seen most of football players, right? They do not really come from privileged backgrounds, at least back here. And they have earned their lives like that, and that is totally respectable, and they are geniuses in what they do. And we've seen plenty. Perhaps that would be one of our strongest exports to the world. We export football players to France, to Italy, to Spain, about everything. Even to China. There's a couple of Argentines in there. Everywhere, and that's how they know us. Currently, right domestically. Our football team, I keep on saying soccer. Our football teams are pretty good. They are not comparable to the European leagues. Those are, the very best play over there. But I would still have a respectable league over here. But our national team, that is something to be proud of. They haven't been doing that well in the international scene. But I'm faithful. And so is all of Argentina. That who will do pretty good next year when I think the qualifying rounds begin for the Qatar Championship, the World Cup.
Well, as with any team, enough, preparation, training, and persistence, you can achieve anything.
And of course Messi, because he's always there. Messi, right? You can all. Yeah, well, and then of course. What else are we good at? We are really, well, I wouldn't say really good, but we've had gold medals in the Olympics in field hockey, particularly the women team. They have beaten, I think the Netherlands are pretty good in that sport. So they have beaten them multiple times. So that's on the women's side. Tennis, of course, we got a couple of good players in here on the top 10. In fact, one of them has won the U.S. Open in 2008. His name is Juan Martín del Potro, very famous player. I personally love tennis. My family, everybody in my family plays tennis.
Here, man. I played tennis in high school. I love it too.
we did not play tennis though, but we will eventually play tennis again.
That we will, man. Just time and patience, and then wait until this current situation in the world improves.
It improves, absolutely. Yeah, that is that. Rugby, on the rugby scene, we are one of the big four countries of the South, together with Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. And we've made it, I think, to the semis of the Rugby World Championship, I think, a couple of years ago. So that was pretty good. We got pretty good players. But as you can see, I'm not super passionate about it. They made me play in my high school rugby, and I just didn't like it at all.
It's rough. I mean, it's rough. I've known people who plays
rough.
it, my grammar's terrible, who have played it, and, some of them enjoyed it, but a lot of them, they're like, it really takes a toll on their body.
Sometimes I make me laugh when I watch what you guys call football. We actually call American football, and it is an interesting sport. We do not play it at all, but we do make some fun of it, because I mean rugby and American football, they're pretty similar. But like you guys are pretty much the only ones in the world who play American football, and you play very well, I should say.
Oh yeah, I mean, I know so many people here. I mean, like when football season, it's like, oh my god, football season.
Yeah, you're like
yeah,
like shown in there. And then on last but not least, one other sport in which we're pretty good at is basketball. And if I'm not mistaken, we actually did it. We made it to the final round of the basketball world championship too last year. I think we were defeated by either Serbia or Spain. I don't remember well. We have a couple of players actually playing in the NBA. One famous example is Manu Ginobili in San Antonio. They're in I think that's Texas, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and then basketball. That's a great sport. We are still far from being as good as the U.S. The U.S. is probably the best of the world.
Give it time, and like I said, give it time.
Give it some time, absolutely. And that is in a nutshell the sports scene back home.
I'm glad you kind of broke that down for us, because a lot of people, soccer, football, whatever you want to call it, everyone knows that, but the other ones not as much. I mean, I actually didn't know about the field hockey as much.
Field hockey is one of our biggest prides.
Yeah. Tennis I knew, because having played tennis, I follow tennis more than other sports, so that doesn't surprise me. But the other two actually were more surprising. But that's excellent. It shows more and more diversity.
Well, on an Olympic level, these are more or less like team sports, and tennis is individual though. But on an Olympic level, I think we have this girl who won in judo a couple of times, but that's like a very specific example.
Yeah, that's still something neat to say though. So speaking of sports, you were saying everyone is drawn to it. So of course that draws us to Argentinian people in general.
Well, I would say you find, at least of all of those sports, soccer, like that one, if you ever encounter an Argentine, they will know about soccer, and they would probably be able to tell you a little bit about the other ones. They'll be a fan of at least one other one of those.
Yeah, and you've hinted at in discussing the economics, politics, sports, you've hinted at just what Argentinian people are like. It seems like they're very, very outgoing, very passionate. Very driven, especially on the things that they think are important and have and believe in.
I think you couldn't have described it in a better way. I think even related to sports. If you go, imagine the U.S. was playing some sort of match in one of these sports against Argentina. I think you would never find such an enthusiastic and passionate, audience in the stadium. I found myself, I was lucky enough in the U.S. to experience an NBA basketball game, and it was fantastic. But you see, the audience isn't really cheering that much, and when they do, it's just for 30 seconds of that match. But Argentina will find that audience. It will all along the match, the 90 minutes that it will last, or 2 hours, whatever. They would be cheering for their team. They would be there they would bring the trombones and a freaking whole band, and there's perhaps also those casseroles I mentioned earlier with those wooden spoons, and they would cheer as high as it would be heard at least a kilometer away that some sort of Argentina against someone match is going on. It's happening right now. Super passionate. You see people with their head, faces painted white and blue, which is the color of our flag, and singing all the anthem. It is remarkable, and if you Google it, you'll see that Argentine audiences and like these sort of events, they are one of the most unique ones.
I mean, I can imagine just it'd be like electrifying, all encompassing, and just a sea of energy that people would resonate in that setting.
Exactly. That makes total sense. As a 101, like a history 101 of like Argentine people, how they are composed, you guys should know that Argentina, such like the U.S., we are both immigrant countries. We were made from immigration. It's so much so that in the 1920s, back when I mentioned that Argentina was the seventh power of the world, I mean, we have literally, of the 7 million that composed our population, half of them were actually from abroad. So you'll see that we actually attracted people to come here. And who were those people? You were wondering. You might be wondering that now. And it's mostly Italians and Spanish people. So you'll see, if I'm not mistaken, 1 in 3 people in here have actually Italian nationality and probably also Spanish nationality.
Oh wow, that's I mean that's very interesting.
We have a very large European heritage, but particularly from those 2 countries. Even myself, I'm a weird case. My family is kind of from Portugal, but it's all that region of the world, from the Iberian Peninsula. And you'll see, when you find an Italian person, you'll see that they actually speak in a very similar way to the way we do. They use hand gestures like the ones I'm using right now, but you cannot see them because you're just hearing me.
Well, Andy, I can relate. My family's Italian, so we're very animated when we talk. So I think there's definitely some similarities. Wherever Italian people go, and they, their descendants, there's a lot of things that are kept.
Absolutely, it is remarkable because I've been places around the world, and they ask me, where do you come from? And one of the first guesses that usually folks tell me is, are you from Italy? And I'm no. But I'm perhaps from what could be considered some sort of Italian colony, because there's so much Italian heritage in here. And that in a way has influenced the way we speak Spanish. Because if you've heard like Argentine Spanish being spoken and their accent is completely different from any other Spanish in Latin America. We speak in the same, like following a very similar Italian accent. I invite you to, go into YouTube and Google or just search in there for different Latin American accents, and you'll see the Argentine is remarkably different. And that's why it's so, among people in Latin America, it's easy to identify.
That's really cool though, seeing that fusion, not just in the people, but also in how it's influenced the Spanish language in Argentina with that kind of that's neat. And definitely go on YouTube and just maybe do a compare and contrast of an Argentinian speaker speaking Spanish versus other people in Latin America. That'd be
or like alternatively, you hear me speaking in English, and I might sound very probably Hispanic. You might guess it. Or some folks have said also that my English accent is somewhat Italian too. If you ever heard an Italian person speaking in English, having studied
in Italy, I would say it does remind me of that.
Some resemblance
yes.
there going on. And so that's and Argentine people in general, it's also you got this tango culture that it's not that everybody's passionate about tango, but I would say that this sort of romanticism, between the man and the woman, it is a pretty big part of our culture, I would say. I invite you to come and experience it because it's pretty unique.
Well, Andy, I certainly will want to take you up on that as soon as I can. I will say that.
Absolutely. But again, I'm speaking from a biased perspective because, of course, I am the observer in here. And
of course, but we all have our biases. But as long as we just try to moderate them, that's all we can do.
Absolutely. So that's Argentina. And then I guess one thing we haven't spoken about yet is food.
Oh, of course. You can never forget the food. Any place you go, if you don't try the food, you're missing out on so much.
And we do have a couple of dishes that we are known for. But before I go into the dishes, a fun fact about our country is that we are 44 million in total. That's relatively it's not such a big number, given that we are actually, I think, the 8th largest country in terms of like surface area. Nonetheless, guess how many cows do we have?
I think it's going to be more than people. Having studied Latin American history during my undergrad, I remember that, like in the 1800s, that even beggars would be seen, or would have been seen riding cows because there were so many cows. Even they could ride a cow, or even it's like, what? Okay.
Well, technically, if like society, if we were living in a like equal place, everybody would be able to own 1.125 cows. We have around 54 million cows. And
wow.
That quantity is growing, and that's just cows. And there's a lot of other animals too in there. And so you guessed it, we love to eat meat, and that would compose at least half of our weekly diet. In my case, I would say around 90%. That is one of the things I miss the most when I'm not back home, because of course you're raised eating steak and beef and barbecue, and like that happens every Sunday. We have very large, very big like barbecue tradition of every Sunday meeting, like gathering around with the family, with friends, and just like holding a big barbecue there, putting some piece of beef into the grill there, and just having some fun. So you can imagine all types of meats being cooked in there, and then
you're making me hungry, man.
Well, come on, it's already, we already ate, both of us, but I'm hungry too, actually. I'm afterwards. But given also our, Italian and Spanish heritage, there's a lot of, Italian food, and we have, I wouldn't say we are big on pizza, but we are pretty big on pasta. And you can see like all of these like boutique restaurants you find here and there that serve pasta. And of course, Spanish cuisine. But that, I won't speak about Spanish cuisine. We need a Spanish person to do that. But from my perspective, Argentine Spanish cuisine, it's just wonderful.
Well, you're giving me more and more reasons to visit. I'll just say that, because
it's just tortillas and it's just like salami and prosciutto. All of those like cold cuts and cheeses. Oh, that is wonderful. But like, what are the two biggest traditional dishes back here? There's two, and these are my personal favorite ones. And one of them is called empanada. Have you heard of the term empanada before?
I don't believe so. It sounds familiar, but I can't say I know what it is.
Do you know what a calzone is?
Yes.
By any chance? It has like that, like half a moon shape.
Mm-hmm.
We had a calzone in China back in the day. Imagine an empanada. If you want to like Google it really quickly, it's also half shaped. It's relatively small, but it's filled. It's like a small cake filled with meat.
Ooh, that sounds good.
Delicious, man. And you either cook it on the oven or you just stir fry it and go. Yeah, that is truly remarkable. And then the other dish, it's called milanesa.
Milanesa.
Probably because it comes from Milan in Italy. Another name, it's known for its schnitzel. Germany.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
You know what a schnitzel is?
Yes, yeah.
It's like that breaded, like piece of steak, and in here, that has to definitely be the national dish. So much so that, it's debatable whether or not it was invented here. Of course, it existed in Europe, but there's so many different variations of that dish that were definitely invented in here that we take that as a national dish, even though it wasn't really born in here. And gore, that is a single, that alone is a reason to come here. Or just go to an Argentine restaurant somewhere in the world. But I love, that's my favorite dish, when you have it with some fries, with some fried egg too, there, and just like you can, like the yellow part of the fried egg, you just...
Oh, the yolk, yeah.
Dip the fry there and some ketchup. Oh, that is my paradise. And I have lived places abroad, and I have dreamt about eating that dish. And I would wake up with my, my pillow being all water. And it would be one of the saddest memories I have from my experience living abroad. Because I would wake up and I would be so sad because all that was a dream. And I wish I was back home eating that dish. And now I am. So I'm grateful for life. I did have that for dinner. but even thinking about it, just makes me, hungry again. So who knows? I might actually go downstairs in a moment and, grab another bite or two.
Well, I mean, I will say as soon as I have a chance to come, I'm trying both of those.
Those are our dishes. Honestly, I love them. I'll be honest with you. I love our food.
Well, that's awesome, man. And like I said, we could do a whole other episode on just food too, because there's so much we can delve into. But the last thing today that we can discuss is, of course, some places in Argentina that you think if people go, they should definitely see.
Oh well, there are so many. I'll try to keep it short because you guys have been hearing us for a long while. I can imagine.
Yeah, you can just make a general list of places you think are really good.
So definitely, you'll first arrive to Buenos Aires if you choose to, come in this journey because that's our international gateway. Some people might call it the Paris of the South because back in the day, a lot of the folks hired a lot of French architects to design many of the buildings that you can find in Center City. But there's a very high resemblance to Europe in there. Beautiful place. It has one of the widest avenues in the whole planet. I think it's around, I would say, a yard long. A yard is around 100 meters. A yard wide, I mean, not long.
Yeah, so you're saying it's about 100, like a block, a square block?
Yeah, like a whole block wide.
Oh, okay. So they're kind of like block-sized buildings, like a square block.
It's called the 9th of July, because 9th of July is the Independence Day here, so it's a very famous avenue. And then, in Buenos Aires, you'll find lots of things to do. There, of course, the tango capital, and there's these sort of places where you'll find people dancing spontaneously. Lots of restaurants too. And so that would be more or less a cultural capital of Argentina, because that's where there's all of these blends of immigration. If you go more local, then there's regionally there's lots of places. For instance, there's a province called Mendoza, where it's very known for the wines, the red wine that is produced there. Because I don't know if you guys heard of, but Argentine wine is pretty famous too.
I personally am a fan of Argentine wine.
And we have a famous type of grape, which is our national pride. It's called the Malbec. I personally, in here, the legal age to drink is 18, and I'm 20, so yes, it's I have drunk a lot of that wine, and I love it. So we go to that region, and we run. They usually do tours around the vineyard. It's beautiful. Then there is one place called Bariloche, which is south of that place, and Bariloche is what we'll call our little Switzerland, because you have a very beautiful lake in there, giant lake, and all mountains surround it. And when you go there in the winter here right now, it's between May and August, and you see all the mountains packed with snow. Fun fact about Argentina, not the best of facts, but an interesting fact is that after the Second World War, many Germans actually found exile in here, because Argentina is such a interesting country that they actually allowed Nazis to find refuge in here. And the place they chose was that place, this city called Bariloche, because it actually resembled a lot of Austria and those places in Europe.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That thing aside, I'm sure there's no more Germans in there today, and it's a beautiful place to be at, to do kayaking. And then, last but not least, there's lots more places, but this one is the one I would like to wrap up with. It's called Ushuaia. It's an interesting name, and it's the southernmost city in the whole world. The southernmost habitable city. It has 100,000, not less than 100,000 people in there, but it's such a beautiful place there. And you can see glaciers, and there's usually expeditions that run from there to Antarctica, because there's a part of Argentina and Antarctica too. So that's definitely one place to visit. And they have a really, really good wines there too, incredibly. They do grow wines.
Yeah, because that would be down in the Patagonia, correct?
That's down the southernmost point of the whole Patagonia. It's incredible.
Wow.
That's what Jules Verne, the famous author, would call the end of the world. it was inspired in that. In the Beagle Channel, which is like it crosses between like Argentina and Chile, right? That straight over there. There's a very famous lighthouse that you folks like taking pictures of, which is like what they like that poetic vision of the end of the world. Well, not in terms of time, but in terms of just like geographically, it sounds nice, and it's a nice place to be unconnected and just reflect about life.
No, it sounds like a great place just to go and enjoy the sights, and have just have some nice personal time, and enjoy the world around you, and just that the grandeur of that place. All three of those places sound really neat. Buenos Aires, and the other two places. I mean, all three would definitely be included on a trip if I would go there.
Absolutely. If anybody that wants to come, I'm here for now. So let me know when I can help you out.
Well, everyone, there you have it. You have yourself a potential tour guide right here. So if you want to go to Argentina,
in Buenos Aires, which is where I live, I would be delighted. So
there you go. There you go. And that's one thing I found from traveling is that there's nothing better than spending time with a local and traveling in their country with them, because it just makes the experience so much more wholesome. And then likewise, if they ever come to your country, you can give the same thing to them where you're from, because
it would be a different experience. I would say.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. And I'm really happy that you got to share these facts of Argentina with us. Some that are pretty common knowledge, others that are not. And I've learned some things today, and that's really neat. So we're definitely going to do more episodes and cover more topics, both about Argentina and about what we've done in China, and who knows what else down the road. So,
Absolutely.
So Andy, again, I just wanted to thank you for joining me today, and it's been very interesting. I hope that everyone who listens today has thought it was interesting, and if anyone has any ideas or suggestions of what we can talk about in greater depth, please let us know. We'd love to hear from you, and we can add more content and try to interconnect this great world of ours, because there's so much diversity and so much that people can learn that we can't just stick to where we are and content ourselves with what's around us. We have to reach beyond that.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, as usual, and I hope you guys enjoyed it too. And welcome to Argentina, I would say.
There you have it. So until next time, this has been another episode of International Immersion, and we will see you on the next episode.